In 1977, a United States Army colonel named Charlie Beckwith sat down to write a proposal. He had spent a year attached to the British SAS.
We are looking for men
He had trained with them,
independent
operated alongside them, watched how they selected soldiers, how they organized missions, how they thought about problems that conventional armies couldn't solve. And when he came home, he told the United States Army that America needed exactly the same thing. First Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta was activated on the 19th of November, 1977. The world would come to know it simply as Delta Force. This is the origin story that most people don't know. Delta Force was not invented independently. It was, in the most direct sense, an attempt to build an American version of the SAS. And what happened next? The ways the two units grew together, diverged, and developed their own distinct identities is one of the most interesting stories in modern military history. The SAS had a 36-year head start. Founded in 1941 in the North African desert by David Stirling, the regiment was built around a single radical idea: that small groups of highly selected, autonomous soldiers could achieve results out of all proportion to their numbers, if those soldiers were chosen correctly and trusted to make their own decisions. That idea was proven in the desert. It survived the war, the post-war disbandment, the reformation in 1952, and decades of operations in Malaya, Borneo, Oman, the Falklands, and beyond. By the time Charlie Beckwith arrived in Herefordshire in the 1960s, the SAS had refined that original idea into something close to a doctrine: small teams, extreme autonomy, selection that filtered not for the strongest, but for those who could think clearly under sustained pressure. Beckwith recognized immediately that the United States had nothing like it. America had special forces, it had rangers, it had exceptional soldiers in many categories. But it did not have a unit whose entire philosophy was built around the kind of soldier the SAS had spent decades learning how to find.
Maintain formation.
He spent years after his attachment trying to convince the US Army to create one. It took a decade. But in 1977, Delta Force was born. The selection processes tell you almost everything you need to know about the two units. SAS selection takes place in the Brecon Beacons of Wales, a mountain environment that is cold, wet, and relentlessly demanding. Candidates complete a series of timed navigation marches alone, carrying weight that increases progressively over 3 weeks. The total process, from the mountain phase through the jungle phase to final SERE training, lasts approximately 6 months. The pass rate historically sits between 10 and 15%. Delta Force selection, known formally as the Operator Training Course, follows a recognizably similar structure. It begins with a physical assessment phase. It includes long-distance land navigation under time pressure, carrying significant weight. It includes a final march that bears a clear resemblance to the SAS's own culminating event. The pass rate is similarly low. Estimates from open sources suggest somewhere between 5 and 15%, depending on the year and intake. The structural similarity is not coincidence. Beckwith designed the Delta Force selection process by studying what the SAS had built. But there are differences. Delta Force selection has historically placed a greater emphasis on structured physical assessment in its early phases: fitness tests, timed runs, formal evaluation criteria. SAS selection famously avoids this. Candidates are not told whether they are passing or failing. The directing staff give no feedback. The ambiguity is itself part of the test. The SAS is specifically looking for soldiers who can perform without external validation. Delta Force, operating within the larger structure of the United States Army, has developed its own version of that test, but within a system that also demands more formal documentation and assessment standards. Two processes built from the same original design, adapted over decades by two different military cultures. This is where the most interesting differences emerge. The SAS operates within a philosophy of extreme decentralization. A 4-man SAS patrol inserted deep behind enemy lines is expected to make independent decisions at every level, about routes, about timings, about whether to abort a mission or continue. Without reference to higher authority if communication is not possible. The regiment is built around the assumption that the man on the ground knows things that no headquarters can know. Authority flows downward to the point of action. Delta Force has developed its own sophisticated approach to autonomy. and by most accounts, it operates with significantly more independence than conventional U.S. military units. But the United States Army and the broader U.S. military structure operates within a culture that places greater emphasis on coordination, documentation, and command authority than the British system does. This is not a criticism. It is a reflection of scale. The British Army is small. The SAS is a tiny component of it. The relationships between the regiment and its command structure are personal and long-standing. The United States military is the largest and most complex fighting force in human history. The systems that hold it together necessarily create more structure, more process, more formal coordination. Delta Force operates within that system and has become extraordinarily effective within it. But the philosophical starting point remains different. The SAS was designed by a junior officer who deliberately bypassed the chain of command to deliver his proposal directly to the commander-in-chief. Delta Force was created through an official Army program, approved through formal channels, with congressional oversight. 2 units, 2 founding philosophies, both exceptional, neither quite like the other. The specializations reinforce this difference. The SAS maintains 4 troops within each of its squadrons, each specializing in a different method of insertion: air, water, mountain, and mobility. Every member of the regiment is cross-trained across multiple specializations, with deep expertise in combat medicine, signals, languages, and demolitions. The generalist specialist model. Soldiers who can do almost anything, with particular depth in 2 or 3 areas, is central to how the SAS operates. Delta Force organizes itself around assault squadrons and a support squadron, with considerable internal specialization. It has developed particular depth in the area of direct action, the precise, rapid, violent resolution of high-value targets that reflects both the demands placed on it by the U.S. military system and the resources available to it. Delta Force operates with a level of technological support and integration that the SAS, as a smaller force within a smaller military, cannot always match. The equipment available to Delta operators, surveillance systems, communications, air support, often reflects the broader investment of the United States military machine in a way that gives Delta an operational capability at the high end that is formidable by any measure. The SAS, by contrast, has often operated in environments where that level of support was not available, and has built its doctrine around doing more with less. The clearest evidence of what the 2 units actually think of each other is how often they work together. Operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, counter-terrorism actions across multiple theaters. SAS and Delta Force have operated alongside each other in more sustained joint operations than almost any other 2 special forces units from different nations in modern history. Former operators from both units who have spoken publicly describe a deep mutual respect, not the superficial respect of units who have never tested each other, but the specific calibrated respect of professionals who have operated in the same environments, under the same conditions, and seen each other perform. The British and American Special Forces communities have developed shared training programs, joint selection exercises, and deeply integrated planning processes that go beyond what is publicly documented. There is a reason for this. When the United States needed to build Delta Force, it turned to the SAS, and the relationship that began with Charlie Beckwith sitting in Herefordshire taking notes has continued, evolved, and deepened for nearly 60 years. So, who would win? It is the question everyone asks, and it is, in a fundamental sense, the wrong question. The SAS and Delta Force are not competing. They are not designed to fight each other. They are designed to solve problems that no other unit can solve. And the problems they have been asked to solve have, more often than not, led them to the same places, at the same times, working toward the same objectives. What the comparison reveals is not a hierarchy. It reveals 2 military cultures, one British, one American, each bringing their own history, philosophy, and approach to the same fundamental challenge. The challenge that David Sterling identified in a Cairo hospital in 1941. How do you find soldiers who can function autonomously, under extreme pressure, in environments where the conventional rules of military organization cannot follow them? The SAS found one answer. Charlie Beckwith studied that answer, and then spent a decade building his own. Different answers to the same question. both of them right. In the next video, we examine the unit that France built to answer that same question, in its own way, after its own crisis, with its own philosophy, the GIGN. Subscribe, and we'll see you there.